What are the options for Noah Fifita as the last man left, and what could some of these coaching options be? Where are we at with Arizona football?
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats. This show is brought to you today by Gametime. Go to Gametime, and again, you can get great deals on a multitude of different things. And the great thing about it, too, is that you know that you can also get something if they a discount with the locked on code. Check it out at Gametime. Okay, now, Arizona football, what is that next step? As we detailed yesterday, pretty much everybody is now in the transfer portal for Arizona outside of a few. And that's obviously not a good thing for the Arizona Wildcats because the players that they've lost to this point are good basketball players. There's really no other way around it. These are good football players, excuse me. Now, got basketball in my mind because we're going to talk UCLA a little bit later. But the watching this, though, you can just tell that whenever this ends, this just feels like this is not going to end well, and I feel terrible for the players because the thing about all of this, too, is that these players wanted to stick around. They all turned down more money before, so if somebody says, oh, but they were going to turn down money a second time, well, you don't know that because, again, they already did turn down money, and some of these people turned down significant amounts of money to come back to the University of Arizona, so you've got to factor that in. Now, Noah Fifita is, at this stage, is kind of the last man left. I have the utmost respect for Noah Fifita and his family. This is like I said, these are just great. These are great people. There's no other really way around it. And they want to be Wildcats. But sometime at the end of the day, you've also got to make a decision on what's best for you. And right now, I don't know. I think it's difficult to sit here and say that Arizona is that right decision, but who knows? We're going to talk about some offensive coordinator names in a second. And maybe one of these offensive coordinator names can be somebody that is going to maybe move the needle a little bit. But there's you're going to have to retool this entire team, essentially. Not only this entire team, you're going to have to retool this entire offensive line. You're going to have to retool the skill position players. I mean, you name it, this Arizona football team pretty much needs it. And Noah Fifita this past year, you went into a season, and I mean, let's be honest here. I think this was kind of coaching malfeasance. I kept putting that out there. You didn't have any identity. You didn't have really anything. And I think that's somewhat difficult to be able to put out there. Is that you don't if you don't have a how do I put this? If you don't have a situation where you know what your offense is, you don't know what your identity is, you don't know what your any of that, it's pretty much a difficult situation. So with Noah Fifita, you know what Noah Fifita can do. Noah Fifita is good at making quick decisions. Not only is Noah Fifita good at making quick decisions, he is also a really, really good player that has generally been able to go through his progressions. What Arizona needs somebody, a coach that is going to have him get the ball out quickly. And we're going to talk about some of those players in a second because, again, the offensive line next year is not going to be very good. And not only is it not going to be very good, I think it's fair to say at this point that you're probably not going to have a ton of skill position players as well. But again, you should be able to get some skill guys, and we're going to talk about that in a minute because there are some things here that we can definitely agree on. And Alonzo Carter being a beast is one of those ones. Now, the other thing too that I think it's also very fair to say is that whoever this OC is, you're going to have to come in with a plan. You're going to have to come in here with something that's tangible, where you can say, okay, this is something where you know for a fact that this is my identity, whatever that is, whether that's run heavy, whether that is throwing the ball all around the field, whether that's air raid, whether that's whatever, you have to have something. We always talk about it. Jedd Fisch had an identity. Jedd Fisch knew exactly what he wanted to do, and you could see it. And that's something that I think any coach has to have, and that's something that this coaching staff hasn't had. And you've got to change that, and you got to change that immediately, in my opinion. But Noah Fifita, though, obviously you're going to want you want him back. But the problem, though, too, is that he's going to have options. Now, some of these options might not be as good as maybe they were in the past, and I think that's something you got to keep in mind. I think that he would have Utah was always going to be an option for him, but they brought in Devin Dampier, Tucson native Devin Dampier, and I think they feel probably pretty good about that. But Noah's going to have options. When you look around, it might be something where it's like, again, I'm just throwing out some names, but like a Washington State, somebody like that, that's a good program that, might need a quarterback, whatever the case may be. But he's going to have some, but also if you're here and you're Noah Fifita, I think you've got to know for a fact what they are going to give you, what you are going to be given to play with, and I just don't think that he knows that at this time. And I think not only does he just not know that at this time, I just don't think that he is I just don't think that it's pretty much fair at this stage to say that anybody really knows what's going on, and that's obviously a big issue for him. Now, as some of the players around him, obviously Teteroa McMillan's going on. You know that you're going to get back Jeremiah Patterson next year. You know you're going to get back Sam Olson. But that's kind of the epitome of everything that I'm talking about, though, is that the players that are coming back aren't real difference makers. Now, Alonzo Carter does a very, very good job when it comes to recruiting running backs. So I don't have any doubt that they're going to be able to get some good running back here. Whether that's, you've already got Kedrick Risano coming back. You've also got Eli Sanders, who's going to be visiting here from New Mexico. I would imagine that Arizona's probably going to get him. You also can get the New Mexico wide receiver. Again, he's good. He obviously torched Arizona, and I believe his girlfriend is at the University of Arizona. So those are guys that I think Arizona is going to be able to get. But you got the thing that I'm going to keep coming back to is the offensive line. Where are we with the offensive line? And that's where I just don't see anything that indicates that there's going to be a really good offensive line intact here. So that's going to be something that next offensive coordinator is definitely going to have to figure out, and they're going to have to figure that one out in a hurry because, again, it's just not good enough at this stage on what everything Arizona's dealing with. Now, before we get into some of those names, we are going to talk about something that is very obvious. Game time. Game time, game time. Check out Game Time. Here's the great deal about Game Time and why you will love Game Time is there are all kinds of great things in there. I used Game Time to go to the Alamo Bowl last year, and it was a lot of fun. And at the Alamo Bowl, like I said, there were other people. Our good pal Jason Shear talked with somebody that used Game Time for the Alamo game. And again, here's the deal: download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time. What time is it? Game Time. Ooh. All right, now. Game Time picks, you can get all kinds of, you got toggling the features shows the total up front with no prices or no surprise fees at checkout. That's the great thing about it is this isn't complicated. Check out Game Time. Let Game Time work for you because Game Time is where it is at. Download Game Time. Again, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Game Time. Again, everybody's using it. There's a reason that everyone's using it. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right. I have no doubt that Alonzo Carter is going to get good running backs here. I don't think that there's any doubt about that. I got no complaints about anything that Alonzo Carter has doing from that perspective. Now, the wide receiver, and a buddy of mine made this point, and I think it's a really, really good point, is that you should be able to get good. You should be able to get good players, like I said, at the wide receiver position. There's 10 million players that have entered the wide receiver or that have entered the transfer portal that are good wide receivers. You got to be able to get a few of those players. Not only do you need to be able to get a few of those players, you need to be able to get guys that you look at and you're like, okay, that is somebody that I could see really contributing for us. Because right now, Arizona doesn't have any of those guys. Not only does Arizona not have any of those guys, You got to get those. And again, I imagine they will get those. But then everything still stems to on the lines, in my opinion, though. I mean, you look at it this past year. Arizona, Brent Brennan inherited three really, really good offensive linemen and wasn't able to get any players that were basically, were able to basically be difference makers. And I think that is that's the issue. Where are we then to that point where you can't really get any of that? That to me is very, very concerning. Why are we at the stage 2 with Arizona where you don't really know? You're like looking, you're like, okay, these players, not so much. So I don't know where you're going to get some of these players, though. But again, when it comes to the OC names, the first one that I would keep an eye on is Seth Dagey. Seth Dagey. Now, again, some of these names, I'm going to be very honest with you. I don't know if they would take this job, but you also got to remember too, from that kind of perspective. You also know that some guys are going to look to get paid more, and you can't really blame him. So the first one that we need to talk about is Seth Dagey. Seth Dagey's an interesting one for me. He's the Marshall offensive coordinator. Was an ex-quarterback at Texas Tech. You look at what he's done, and it's actually fairly impressive. And he also fits into what I do think that you need. You need a younger guy, and you look at him, he's been around. He was an offensive analyst for Lane Kiffin. He's, again, been pretty successful at Marshall, and he's young. I want somebody young. I want somebody innovative. And again, if I get somebody that's older, that's actually okay with me, but I need somebody that is versed on modern offensive coordinator concepts. I know that is something that people might be like, oh, well, you care about the age, this and that. I don't care about the age. I really don't care about the age. If they're hip, if they're in on what they're doing. What I don't want is bringing in somebody like Dino Babers that hadn't called a play in 15 years and the game had clearly passed him by. I can't have that. That to me is just something that is totally unacceptable. So somebody young, Seth Dagey. Now he's making, I think, $275,000 a year. Is that, like I said, is that going to be 1 to 1.5? Most people probably take that. I think the question, though, that you have to ask, though, is if you are Seth Dagey, are you going into a situation, though, where you're basically being set up for failure? I don't know that, and I think that's the question, though. I don't know that what is that situation that you're going into, and do you really want to be set up for long term, or do you want to be able to get some money? And again, I'm definitely not the one that makes any judgments on money, because again, I think that it makes a lot of sense at some point to say, okay, but do you want to be out of a job in a year? Do you want to have your rising star possibly be taken out because you put yourself in this situation? That's what I don't know. That's what it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And it's got to be interesting to see how this all does play out with Noah Fifita. And with Noah Fifita, how does this all play in? And I think we're going to find that. I think we're going to find that one out. Okay, then you got another one. You got Joe Craddock. Craddock is very much along that same line at Tulane. He is like I said, he's the offensive coordinator and QB's coach. Also young, again, 39 years old. He is he's been around. I mean, you look at him. He's been the OC at Troy, at Tulane. He was the OC at SMU, a quarterbacks coach. He's like I said, he's 39 years old, done a lot of good stuff. And again, he is he's somebody that's young. He was hired early on by Dabo Sweeney, so he's got a good track record at 20. He was named. He was a Broyles Award finalist in 2017. Things like that are fine. Like I said, but are you looking to leave a job where you've got a pretty good setup right now and you could be a year or two away from getting a big time job? I think that's the question that a lot of people probably just don't have an answer for, and I think only that person does. I would expect this offensive coordinator to be announced here shortly. I would imagine that by the time we have the show tomorrow, this could be done. So I'm just throwing out some names here. Not really sure. Again, these are just some of the names that have come up. So these are obviously somebody to keep an eye on. These now another one too, and this is clearly my third one because I've never been a huge fan of his. Is Matt Wells. Not a fan. Again, I think Matt Wells feels very much like a Brent Brennan type hire, where it's you're just kind of like, all right, well, it's just kind of meh. I guess it checks off a box, but at the end of the day, is that really moving the needle for anybody? He was blown out at Texas Tech. He's been the associate head coach at Kansas State, but I never really looked at that Kansas State offense and thought that was a dynamic. Again, I don't think Avery Johnson was great, but that just kind of is what it is. Wells to me is a distant third in all of this. He is somebody that's just not somebody that I just don't find dynamic. I don't find inspiring. Not only do I not find him dynamic or inspiring, I just don't think that he addresses some of the needs that you have here at the University of Arizona. And then another one to maybe keep an eye on is Tommy Rees. He's like an assistant to the assistant in the NFL. I know that he was somebody that North Carolina was waiting on Bill Belichick for. If he was probably going to be their head coach. Obviously, Bill Belichick was hired there. Maybe somebody to keep an eye on. But those are kind of the four names. And again, nobody really knows for a fact because the coaching staff has been very tight-lipped on this. It's hard to really get anything out of that. So again, that's going to be an interesting thing to see how this does play out. But as far as expectations for next year, and we're going to talk about that, my expectations and what my hopes are actually very simple in all of this. Is have an identity. I know that sounds really, really, simplistic, and it is. But again, just have an identity, and then we can work backwards from there. Because this past year, again, you went into a season where you had a pretty talented squad and there was absolutely no identity. And that to me is still going to be the issue, is that how did you go into this year and not have any identity? I think we are at the stage now where you at least know that this team is most likely going to not be very good, but at least be entertaining. That is where I just keep coming into all of this. At least be entertaining, because right now it's not entertaining at all, and it's boring. Again, if you're not going to be good, make this interesting for me, because so far this has just been an incredibly boring product to watch. Not only has it been an incredibly boring product to watch, it's been something where you're like, nobody's going to come watch that. Now, also, you need something that's going to bring in a little bit of fan support as well. You need somebody that's going to win that presser. Generally, I think winning the presser is a stupid term. I don't really care much about that because honestly, a lot of times coaches that are very, very good don't win the presser. But at Arizona, where everybody is kind of out on what's going on with Brent Brennan, you kind of need to be able to get somebody that's going to bring in some next level excitement, because everybody's gone. And I think that's the biggest issue here, is everybody's pretty much gone. And where's that next person going to be coming from? But the 2025 offense, you got to have somebody in here that is going to be at least, have something, just something. And again, I'm not asking for the world here, but something where you're like, okay, this guy gets it. He might not have a lot of talent to work with, but I also think that you're at the stage too where you do know that at least at this stage, you can maybe get something in there that could work its way out. When I look at some of the transfer portal names that we're going to talk about here in a second, my biggest concern, again, we're going to go back to this. My biggest concern is that offensive line and where all of that is at, because that is going to be a huge part of all of this, and we're going to get into that here in just a second. But first, FanDuel, my friends. FanDuel, check it out at FanDuel. All right, all kinds of really good stuff at FanDuel. Now, here's the deal with FanDuel. At FanDuel, you can put down $5 and you can get $150 in free plays. That simple, that easy. But you got to be a new customer. Not only do you have to be a new customer, you have to be able to, you have to be in here and you have to know that, you got to win the pick. You got to win the pick. And I think that's kind of where that's where it's at with this. You watch college football right now and you're saying, I'm going to bet against so-and-so because I got a pretty good feel for that one. Well, check that one out. Use FanDuel again because you can put down $5 and you get $150 in free plays. And you got the NFL here, you got the NBA, you got all kinds of really good stuff. And again, check it out. You will thank me later on this one because I think with FanDuel, the great thing about it is that you can bet before, you can bet during, and after that, you're also going to be good to go. And you know that your money is good as well. So again, hop in there, FanDuel, put down $5, get $150 in free plays if that bet hits. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. Okay, now, the offensive lineman, that's what I'm concerned about here, is that you got somebody like a big Jonas Savaiinaea who is, again, he's a transcendent talent here at the U of A. It's going to be a first-round pick. He's a monster. At Arizona, he didn't actually do he probably took a little bit of a step back, but I think the stage 2 is that, you're going to have to rebuild this. You basically gave yourself no margin for error, and not only did you not give yourself any margin for error, you're going to have to hit here. And I think what worries me is that these guys that are visiting, there's a lot of Northwestern states, and not only in a lot of Northwestern states, there's also a lot of guys where you're just kind of like, all right, I don't really know that these guys are good enough. We will see how this does play out. But again, you lose Wendell Moy, you lose Josh Baker, you lose Jonas Savaiinaea. Those are all big losses. I mean, there's really no other way around it. Those are losses that are going to be huge in the landscape of this football program, and you're going to have to replace those. And I just don't think that looking at this staff that you have an idea that they're going to be able to do that. Again, if this was Alonzo Carter is going to get good players. He's connected. He knows what he's doing. Alonzo Carter is going to get good. But the problem is I don't really have any faith that Josh Oglesby is going to get good players. That, on the defensive line, that a Joe Samalo is going to get good players. And that is the concern, is that generally you don't get better by losing all these players. And that's where I'm kind of concerned about all of this. And we will see how this does play out. But biggest thing, though, is you got to get an OC in there. You got to figure out what you're going to do with Noah Fifita, because if Noah Fifita's not back, I think you're probably going to get a mid-major quarterback, or you're probably going to get a guy that used to be really, really highly rated that's probably just not really that good. Like a Sam Hewitt or an Isaac Wilson, somebody like that, where it's like, this just isn't good enough. But you got to figure that one out. And again, those are 3 names. Again, Seth Dagey or Craddock, I'd be totally cool with. I really don't want Matt Wells. I think that just kind of goes back with the bland, meh kind of a situation. I don't want that. I need somebody that's going to be bring a little bit of a dynamic factor to it. Even if they're young, I don't really, I need somebody young. If I get somebody old, have it be somebody like a Dirk Cooter, somebody that, and I know it's Cutter, but have it be somebody that has at least been involved in plays, has been involved in what you're going to do, because right now it's just not really good enough. And that's, I think, where we're kind of, where all of this is just kind of frustrating, is that we're talking about the same stuff. Now, tomorrow, we're probably going to talk about the offensive coordinator. Hopefully the offensive coordinator has been hired. If we're talking about that, that would be great. How would he fit with Noah Fifita? What is the game plan for all of these players coming in? That is something that is, I think, going to be very interesting in all of this. We'll talk about that, and we'll probably talk a little bit of Arizona UCLA, because that game is right around the corner, and that is a game that Arizona absolutely has to win. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Arizona's got to win that, kind of like football, but it's a little bit different. you kind of behave your way into that with Arizona basketball by losing games against any good team. You got to be able to beat UCLA. It's a Power 4 opponent, and I think then you can get back on the right track. You don't win that game, then I think it becomes very concerning, and it becomes very concerning very, very quickly for Arizona. And that's kind of where we're going to leave all of that. But as always, very much appreciate you all making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Mike Luke. Bear down, back the A, and we will be back with you tomorrow. TTFN, ta-ta for now.